Hi. It's never been easier to travel around the world. Over the last 35 hours, I just flew via Sydney, Australia, onto China, and then onto Vancouver, flying over 11,000 miles. Today, there are over 100,000 flights that take off every day from over 17,000 airports around the world. That's one flight every second. With so much flying happening all the time, it's hard to remember that less than 100 years ago, there was no commercial flying happening at all. That my trip yesterday halfway around the world was even possible is due in no small part to two brothers who in 1903 in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, flew for the first time what we today know as the airplane. But this is not a story about the first airplane. This is a story about the first human flight. To put into perspective what we've accomplished over the last 100 years of human flight, I want to go back over 2,000 years to ancient China, where the story of human flight begins. The earliest recorded flight happened in the 4th century in ancient China, and it was taken by a man by the name of Yuan Huangtou. Yuan didn't want to fly. In fact, he probably had absolutely no interest in flying. Unfortunately, he found himself to be the son of a rival emperor to the current emperor of China at that time, Gao Yang, who was a man renowned for his wickedness. Gao decided that he wanted Yuan dead, and he decided that the best way to kill him was going to be to attach him to a kite and then launch him off a really high tower, and he could try and fly his way down. If not, he would fall to his death. Fortunately for Yuan, he survived. But the remarkable part of this story is not that he survived, but that before he landed, he actually flew 2.5 kilometers. This is the first instance recorded in human history of manned flight. Unfortunately for Yuan, the emperor still wanted him dead, and he was soon after killed by starvation. By the time of Marco Polo's visits to China in the late 11th century, what they called by then man-lifting was a common practice. According to Marco Polo, it was most commonly used by sea captains who would attach a man to a kite on the deck of their ship and fly him up in the air to determine whether or not their voyage was going to be auspicious. Marco Polo wrote about this, quote, "The men of the ship will have a hurdle, that is a grating of withers, at which each corner and side of this framework will be tied a cord, and they will all be tied at the other end to a long rope. Next, they will find some fool or drunkard, and they will bind him on the hurdle, and this is done when a strong wind prevails." Marco Polo continues and describes what the sea captain looks for in order to decide if he's going to have a good voyage or a bad voyage. If the hurdle goes straight up and makes for the sky, they say that the ship for which the test has been made will have a quick and prosperous voyage. But if the hurdle has not been able to go up, no merchant will be willing to enter the ship for which the test has been made, because they say that she could not finish her voyage and would be oppressed by many ills. So what makes these kite-flying men so special? After the 11th century in China, there is no well-recorded event of anybody flying again until 1893, when Lawrence Hargrave invented what's called the box kite and created a machine with sufficient lift to lift a man into the air again. It's only 10 years after that that the Wright brothers take their first flight. This makes me wonder that had the ancient Chinese had the internal combustion engine, could they have invented the airplane 2,000 years ago? It wasn't until the early 20th century that the idea of commercial human flight was even thought possible or feasible. Commercial aviation as we know it today, getting on a flight to go and travel somewhere else in the world, didn't really take off until after the Second World War in the 20th century. While human wonder about flight is a very old thing, Our capacity to actually use flight to travel is a very new thing, and it amazes me that today we get the opportunity not only to experience the wonder of flight safely and comfortably, but that we can use air travel to fly through the air to almost any place we can imagine going in the world. The next time my flight gets delayed or I'm stuck on the tarmac for over 40 minutes, I'm going to try to gather my patience and remember that human flight is barely 100 years old. And in the scheme of human history, commercial air travel is practically brand new. In the words of Louis C.K., we're living a Greek myth. This is the third video that I've done in a series on the past and how it influences our lives today. If you enjoyed this video or didn't, please let me know in the comments and give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next week.